Well, Curtis, welcome to Resilient Retail. I am over the moon and sweaty and jittery and excited to talk to you because I am a super fan of REI, especially living in Colorado. I think my husband and I probably spend about 30% of our income at REI. I would say is a probably fair estimate. So tell us a little bit about what you do at REI.
Yeah, happy to. And thank you very much for that, Kristen. I think I am the champion of having really cool and unusual titles that are hard to explain, but I'm REI's Chief Experience Officer. And of course, we could get into a lot of detail about what that means, but I think in a nutshell, my job is to help put the customer at the center and just create an awesome end-to-end experience for REI's customers. Like, there's way more to it than that, but in a nutshell, that's what I get really excited to do every day.
Oh, I mean, you know this because you told me you listen to the show, which I'm going to take like a week before that really processes in my head. But you know that, like, and my listeners know this is what I talk about all the time. Like, the customer experience is the center of everything. And so to hear a brand as large and well-known as REI really having that large of an investment in customer experience, like from the highest level in the company, to me is such an exciting sign of where just in general kind of the industry is going. I have my reasons for why REI feels like such a special brand to me. I'm curious for you, what makes REI so special and why do you love what you do?
Oh my gosh, that's such an awesome question. I think what I didn't fully realize, Kristen, when I came to REI, hopefully everyone who listens to this is a member and shops at REI. Generally, people know REI as a retailer. What people may not know is that REI is a co-op. And you might say, well, like, who cares? That is actually an important distinction for us. We were founded by a group of climbers, and our mission is to help people get outdoors. And we're owned by our members. We're not a public company. We are like owned by people like you. And that both gives us inspiration. It gives us permission to do things that other retailers wouldn't do. And I could give many examples, but we're a very large content publisher. We have a content studio. Why do we do that? Because our mission is to help people get outside. We have an experiences business. Part of my team is hundreds of guides and instructors that help people get outside every day. That's not a normal thing for a retailer to do. Yeah. It's because of we're a co-op and because of our mission to get people outside. So I've worked at a lot of places. That changes how we do our jobs every day.
I love it so much because I feel like so much of what we're talking about constantly in retail is how can you put the customer at the center of all of your decisions? But at the same time, business owners are making business decisions on profits and money and margins. And so REI being a co-op, it sounds to me like it allows for so much more creativity and freedom in serving the actual customer above anything else, because they're not just customers, they're stakeholders, they're owners, they're pretty much the heartbeat of the brand. Tell me, you mentioned some examples, of things in you said a few, but kind of this idea of that co-op, meaning that you can invest in customer experiences in a way that larger companies can't. Tell us more about kind of just that strategy and how that plays out into the way you make decisions from such a high level.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it really is my obsession, Kristen, my whole career. This idea of what it really means to be customer obsessed is something that fascinates me. I think being a co-op and being owned by our members, it affects all the decisions we make. The fact that our mission is to get people outdoors causes us to make decisions differently. I'll give you a very practical example. We are a specialty retailer in the outdoor industry. You can buy a bike from REI. But because of our mission, we don't just want to sell you a bike. We don't just want to transact. We want to think about the journey of a cyclist. So what we want to do, and we do some of these things today, you will see us do more of this over time. We don't want to end the relationship with the customer in selling them a bike. What else does that customer need to really enjoy being a cyclist? Well, they probably need services and repairs. So we offer that today, and you will see us do much more with that in the future. In the future, they may want to lease a bike. They may want to trade in a bike. Those are the kinds of things you can expect us to do. They may be interested in content. They may want to take a class. Guess what? One of our most popular classes is how to ride a bike. And, during COVID, a lot of people bought bikes, and many of them took this class with their kids. We want to create community for cyclists. So I use that as a simple example. A more standard retail way of looking at it is sell the bike. We want to serve the fuller journey of that cyclist.
Yeah. And I love how it's not just product based. Obviously, the product comes into play. Like, I can share a perfect example of my exact journey with REI, going through this exact example. I got a mountain bike for the first time, I think 2 summers ago. I hadn't been on a bike since I was maybe 10. Quite literally in college, my athletic trainer did not allow me to ride a bike because I was too accident prone. I was just not allowed to get on a bike. So it shocked everybody when I was like, yeah, I want to do some mountain biking. And so I bought my mountain bike from REI. It got built at REI. It got serviced at REI. We continue to take it back in for servicing. I had a pretty good, I didn't crash, but my bike did, because I kind of just threw it into some bushes and took it back to REI, got it taken care of. I've gotten my helmet from REI, my bike shorts from REI, all of the equipment that I need. And for me, like, that is such an incredible journey to take, and that the experience is not just sell this product and then now you need another product and you need another product. It sounds to me like the idea is more build the entire customer journey where the products kind of then fall in naturally in place of what they need along that journey.
That is absolutely right. I think, you captured a lot there. I know in the retail climate we live in today, most of us are not going to sell things at a lower price than Amazon or Walmart. We're probably not going to be able to ship it to you faster, although we need to meet customer expectations. And so, like every retailer, we think about how do we differentiate? Where can we compete and win? And where the answer to that question aligns with our mission and something that customers care about is what you said: serve that full journey of, in that case, the cyclist. I'll say a couple other things, Kristen, about that. When I got to REI, I was in awe of the green vest. Our frontline employees in our stores, our guides and instructors, are the embodiment of REI. And I think one of the things they do, to your point, is expertise. If you go into an REI store, you're never going to feel rushed. That green vest will take, this has happened to me, 45 minutes with you to help you find the right thing. And they know what they're talking about because most of them are outdoors people in their personal life, and they're working at REI because they love the outdoors. We know that's part of our secret sauce, and that's something we think we can do better than anyone. The other thing I'll say, Kristen, in the world that we're all living in, we also know the way in which customers are going to do that is changing. And so historically, that's been a green vest in a store. As in your example, with Kristen, we know that needs to happen digitally in the future. And so part of the journey we're on is how do we take this essence of what I call green vest and translate that into a digital world so we can continue to be relevant as the customer changes.
I love it so much. And you hit on something that I really want to dig in with you is I think REI really is known for that. It's that customer service in the store where store associates aren't just there to be store associates. They're not just there to sell a product. They're there to teach, educate, hear about your stories, find what's best for your needs. Like, I have weird foot problems, and I know I spent 30, 45 minutes trying to find the right hiking boot with a store associate and didn't feel rushed or even pressured to buy. It was kind of like, I don't know, go home and make a decision, buy them both, bring one back. We're a member, like all these things where it just feels like you are being invested in as a human, and like the adventures you're going to go on are being invested in. And so, when you do get to purchase that, you're probably going to really like what you buy. I know that you have kind of spearheaded a program that has started to work to bring some of this online. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Totally, Kristen. The interesting thing about COVID, is for so many organizations and retailers, it was a burning platform for innovation. And like, you know, every retailer, certainly that has physical stores, we were sitting in a moment last year where we shut our stores down
Yeah.
because the safety of our customers and our employees is number one. And we were one of the first shut it down. And then you immediately think, well, gosh, number one, how are we going to interact with customers when our stores are closed? And two, we start thinking about even when they open, it will never be the same. How do we adapt? And that created a level of innovation that I have not seen before. And one of the things we did was virtual outfitting. And it was so simple. And you know, this really connects, Kristen, to another thing that's really important to me, which is empowering employees to solve customer problems. So we had a product manager that we just said, how do we enable our customers to interact with a green vest either when a store is closed or they don't want to come into a store because we're in the middle of a pandemic and like people and within a few days she had put a phone number on the website, got a few green vests, boom, went. I mean, and these are the kinds of things that I think pre-COVID companies struggled with. We had no idea how we were going to do it. And right out of the gate, that ability for a customer to talk to a green vest, they loved it. And so then we scaled that to video. So now we do it via video conference. We have had thousands of customers interact with us through virtual outfitting. And I have a little quote because I always think it's really important. Let's give the customer a voice in this. And so one of our employees, I have all these quotes from employees, but this is such a great example, Kristen, of this. An employee told us, I recently helped a woman who had never hiked before get outfitted to summit Kilimanjaro. So imagine your first hike is Kilimanjaro. That we went through virtually gear details, training techniques, expert tips to prepare her. She was so appreciative, and it happened to be for her honeymoon, period. And so we're just getting going. We are starting to do live virtual events, and we are having as many as 1,100 people join a virtual event. So I think, Kristen, we're just in the very beginning of understanding, what the potential is here.
Oh, God. I mean, even that story and that quote starts to pull at the heartstrings. And what I love so much is that idea of empowering the employees to help solve problems, because you're also then empowering employees to become part of the customer's story. That is an experience that I feel that employee will take with them and say, I outfitted somebody to hike Kilimanjaro on their honeymoon. That is something so special that is, to me, what the heart of commerce should be about. And that's why I love REI so much, because you see it come through in all these quote tactics, which are really just services to the customer. You kind of mentioned this is the beginning stage of it, and the pandemic changed the way customers want to interact in the long term. So this isn't something you're going to stop doing. How do you see the program kind of evolving, or do you have any ideas of what the future of this potential virtual outfitting kind of program could look like?
Yeah, I think it's hard to imagine what it will look like in a year or two. What I feel very confident about, Kristen, the customer is going to tell us. And I think, part of it for us is how we work and being really careful to not think we know the answer and having the courage to experiment. So a woman on my team who is almost a 15, 20-year retail employee of REI runs the program. And she is iterating and testing all the time with green vests and customers. Given the satisfaction levels we're seeing, given the number of new customers who become members after one interaction, given the conversion rates, given the all the business metrics, this thing is through the roof. And we're figuring out just how to scale the darn thing now. So we have green vests who are splitting their time between the store and working in the store and doing virtual. And I would imagine, and I don't think this is crazy to say, this will be 10x over the next few years as we get better and better and get a better understanding on how to do this and how to do this really well.
Yeah. So I think we have to talk about this idea of omni-channel customer experience, because it is one of the trickiest things in execution. Like, it's very easy to talk about, put the customer at the heart, make sure all of your processes are seamless, the customer doesn't feel the silos. But actually executing on that strategy, especially at the level of REI, can be extraordinarily complicated. I mean, we've already talked about in-store, we've talked about virtual fittings, we've talked about the power of the store associates, but then there's also the e-commerce side, the experiences side, all the guides, all the trips you can do with REI, so many different things you can do. And, even REI Online is really good at having the options where you can see, is this in stock in my local store? Can I do curbside pickup? I think REI is the place that I've done the most curbside pickups in the last year or however long it's been. How many different channels do you have to think about when we say customer experience? And how do you make sure those experiences don't get siloed from each other?
It's such a great question, Kristen. And I think we're in the early days of that. I early in my career, I came from the technology industry, and there's a saying that companies ship their org chart. And when customers interact with a big company, they're interacting with the org chart. And so they're really, as you said, the experience becomes siloed because 5 different divisions created these experiences and they didn't think end to end. So we're at the beginning days of that. I think from an omni-channel perspective, we're like a lot of retailers. We built great stores and did a really good job, and they were designed to be stores. And then, we were a relatively early adopter of e-commerce. We're out here in Seattle, we're all crazy pioneers. Seattle started with the gold rush. So we were an early adopter of e-commerce, but we built a standalone e-commerce site. They weren't designed to work together. And I think, retailers over the last decade have realized that's not how the customer works. And as you know, Kristen, often there's a retail division and there's a digital division, and all those things get in the way. So we've worked hard to say that's all irrelevant. We have to re-engineer because the customer is going back and forth between physical and digital, and we didn't build it that way. Again, just small anecdote, COVID for many of us was an accelerator. We did curbside. We launched curbside in about 3 weeks. Again, it was a young product manager on my team who basically kind of drew it on a napkin. It wasn't actually a napkin. It was a slide. She said, Curtis, I can do this in 3 weeks.
Wow.
I can light this up. And the whole organization parted the seas, and we launched our initial curbside pickup. And we did it in a way that is common in the digital world, but less common in the retail world, which is we did what we called an MVP. Get the minimum thing the customer wants, and then we're going to iterate and make it better. And now, we have a very robust curbside business. But to your bigger question, Kristen, that is the thing we're thinking about right now. We're one of the biggest content publishers in the outdoor industry. We're a $3 billion retailer. We are the largest outdoor experience company in America. How do we integrate those things so when Kristen comes to the website, we know who you are and we offer you those services in a seamless way? We have work to do. We're making a lot of progress, but it's not as seamless as it needs to be.
Yeah. And just thinking about all those different channels, I think one of the biggest things businesses really get caught up on is, well, I can't track the attribution. I can't track that journey. How are you even starting to address that problem of what is the journey between online, offline? How does a customer deal with both channels, and how can we make it better? Is there a way to track it? Does it come down to some trust and we're building a great experience? Or how do you think about engaging in multiple channels in a way that's very seamless for the customer?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like a lot of retailers historically, we've had what I'd call more transactional metrics. The definition of success was did we convert? And whether that was the website or the store. To your point, we're thinking more broadly now about things that I think are newer in the retail world, like customer lifetime value as being a core metric. And I think what that points us to is the transaction's important, but what really matters is the relationship with the customer. And shifting from a model where you're trying to optimize a transaction and instead thinking about a long-term relationship. So things like customer lifetime value, obviously things like customer satisfaction are really important. We have 20 million members. We, just to pull on your question a little more, we don't think that's enough because we believe that getting outdoors makes people's lives better. That number should be double that if we are really serving our mission. So that means, how do we introduce ourselves to new customers? And then how do we build a relationship with that customer? To your point, again, one way we will do that, not the only way, but just to go back to, Kristen, what you and I were talking about, the cyclist. If our purpose is to sell a bike, we're going to transact with that customer a few times a year. I mean, there's only so many bicycle transactions, but if we're building a relationship with that customer around their love for cycling, so we're offering services, we're creating community, we're offering them content, that customer will engage with us much more frequently. And that more frequent engagement, the activeness, how active that customer member is a more important measure of success for us in the future.
I love it, because it's that the more a customer is engaged with your brand or having really, really beneficial and fantastic touch points with the brand, ultimately that does drive towards conversion and purchase, because I'm at the point where my relationship with REI is so good that if I need to buy anything for any outdoor adventure or thing we're going to do, there's not even a research period. It's just, okay, I'm going to go to the REI website, or I'm going to go into the store and I'm going to find what I need. And I love that you mentioned those metrics of success shifting back towards engagement, and just kind of knowing that in turn really works into business. It kind of works both ways. You've mentioned content a couple of times, and I think I had to bring this up. I just recently this week tweeted about it. Lots of people are so excited to see it. REI has really invested in building its own in-house kind of media arm. Why has content been such a large focus, and how does that play into the customer experience?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And, again, I'll go back to being a co-op and member owned, and, to your really good question at the beginning, how does that impact how we make decisions? And I think a savvy retailer today, of course, would say, gosh, if we have content, it builds authority and organic traffic, and it reduces our cost of acquisition. And those business reasons are really good. And that is all true. But that's not how we look at it. The way we look at it is, our mission is to get people outdoors. We need to build, and one of the ways we look at that is confidence. How do we give, Kristen or a customer the confidence to take that hike they've never taken before, to do that backpacking trip? And one way to do that is through content. So we have this archive called Expert Advice. It is probably the largest archive of how-to in the outdoor industry. And again, REI didn't build that because we thought, gosh, we're going to lower our cost of acquisition. And it's doing all those things. We have an incredible amount of organic traffic. We did it because it will help the customer get outdoors. And so that is a commitment, and we invest in it. And we don't only think about expertise and confidence, but we're thinking about inspiration and community. How do we inspire people to get outdoors? And lastly, you'll notice, Kristen, if you look at some of our content, it's not like world-class climbers and I mean, they're awesome. It's normal people. Yeah. And, it's veterans who are have PTSD and the outdoors is healing. It's, we want to really represent the average person because we know that there's a lot of people today who are not outdoors customers, and we want to make it more accessible to them.
I love that it's the investment in not just success with the products that REI sells, but investment in the success of the experience that somebody has with the products post-purchase, post-transaction, and making sure that can be so good for the customer that it just becomes this kind of ecosystem of brand love and experience. And I know from my perspective, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I was a gymnast, so I spent all my days indoors in a gym. I never thought I would be somebody who hiked 14,000-foot mountains or went mountain biking or any of this. Luckily, I married somebody who had those interests. But so much of it is confidence and education and knowing, I don't even know, how to find a trail, how to pick a shoe, how to even know what to wear to a mountain hike. And the commitment to those stories feels so powerful to me. I don't know if you have anything else to share on that, but I just wanted to share my sappy love story on why I love the content arm so much. Because I think people really do need that confidence, and it's almost like that invitation to go experience that, and then that bridges into the experience they have in store and with REI.
Yeah, it's so well said, Kristen. In that when I joined REI as the chief digital officer, and that evolved over time. Just in my kind of obsession with weird, unusual titles to chief experience officer, which is always good, cocktail conversation, but. Yeah, I think the minute I got to REI, I realized the green vest in the store has set that bar so high for digital. To your point, I mean, I go into our stores all the time just because I walk out being inspired and reminded why I feel so privileged to work at REI. And then I think that interaction that I just had with a green vest who loves their job and loves the outdoors and is so knowledgeable. Gosh, how do I do that in a digital environment? That bar is so high because, as you know, Kristen, all of us have worked so hard at taking friction out of the online purchase. And like Amazon, I worked at Amazon. Amazon's like the best at that, but that's like convenience. And that's important, but that's not inspiring. So I think a lot to your point about how do we make the digital experience engaging and inspiring in the same way that it is when you're talking to a green vest. Or I'll give you like a small anecdote. I joined REI and my wife and I thought, let's go experience the product. So we did a Grand Canyon backpacking trip, a guided trip. And oh my gosh, I would totally recommend any of our trips, Kristen, but it was life-changing. And at one point, my wife and I, it was like 5 a.m. We were crossing the Colorado River. There was like 6 of us, and the guide said, turn your headlamps off. And we looked up, and there was like hundreds of stars in the sky, and my wife just started crying. Yeah. And that's like the experience that we want to create that we think can change people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. That story is like, I feel like I have lived that story as well in a different experience. And it's so emotional, and the products with you don't necessarily matter. And the fact that REI is able to kind of, in a way, capitalize on it, but I don't even like that verb, really harness that to bring that mission to life. And what's funny, I guess not even funny, what's interesting is this journey of how do I take the magic that I've created in a retail setting with my knowledge as a store owner, with my passion as a store owner, with my community, and how do I take that online? I think has been the biggest, hardest journey for local retail in the last year. I mean, they've had to completely get into e-commerce, which is not easy just from a base level. If that's the only channel you're running, it's extraordinarily difficult. But they've spent, years building up that like magic in person to then try and recreate it online, which can be very, very difficult for anybody who's listening who is, a smaller retail trying to really build this experience across channels, trying to bring their passion and their magic online. Do you have any kind of advice for those people who are struggling through that mess right now?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it's a hard one. I think I'd say 2 things. I feel like all of us, and I've been in the digital like e-commerce space forever, and I think we've all spent so much time trying to, optimize, reduce the number of clicks, reduce the number of people who drop out of checkout, and all this optimization inspired by Amazon, which again is great, but we think a lot about how do we tell stories online. All those things that you just said, Kristen, that, every time I go into a store, I'm like, wow, I still digitally, I'm not there. And I think when all of us shut our stores down, those of us who are omnichannel realize, oh my gosh, we got a lot of work to do, because what if we didn't have that physical store?
Yeah.
And so we work a lot on how do we inspire? How do we get beyond just the pure transaction? How do we integrate content in expertise? How do we personalize the experience? I think, it's crazy because I actually joined Amazon in 1999. And at that time, it was no one will ever buy online. So you think, oh my gosh, 20 years have gone by, and I still think, Kristen, and partly why I think Shopify is so exciting, we are just at the beginning of doing all those things digitally. I think on the physical store side, in some ways, a newer retailer has an advantage. We know the role of the store is changing. And we can't think about the store the way we used to. And so we're thinking about that a lot. And of course, it's all the things we know, like micro fulfillment and curbside, and that changes the role of a store. But we're also starting to experiment with other things like small format. How do we go into urban communities and not have to carry everything? How can we let digital carry some of that weight? We'll be doing a lot of experimentation this year with pop-ups. We want to be more relevant to diverse communities and young communities. We need to go where those customers are. And so I think there's also an opportunity just to innovate around what is a store. You can set up a tent and a way to interact with customers and some kind of mobile way to take payment like that. You don't have to build a store to go to where your customers are. So I think those are some of the interesting things that are going to happen over the next few years.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Curtis, I could talk to you for, 5 hours, but let's wrap up, and I'm excited to hear your answer to this. We ask every guest on the show, what does resilience mean to you?
Yeah, I think we certainly have a better understanding of that after COVID. I think resilience means customer obsession. I think all of us will succeed or fail based on how focused we are on that customer. And as you know, that customer is changing rapidly. I think related to that means being employee obsessed. If you're a retailer with frontline employees, you will succeed or fail based on how they serve the customer. The only last thing I would say, and I know this is something that Shopify does really well, that means innovation. Mm-hmm. None of us can interact with our customers the way we did a year ago, and the way we are interacting with customers today will be irrelevant in a year. So I think customer obsession, employee obsession, and then innovation is key.
You are speaking my language, Curtis. It's like hearing my own speech back to myself. It's fantastic. And it makes me so happy. Thank you so much for being on the show. I will be pinching myself for weeks after this that this is my life and that I got to sit down and talk with you. I appreciate it so much. And I can't wait to go to REI, which I think we're doing this weekend.
Awesome, Kristen. I'm grateful. Thank you so much for the time. And thanks for all the great stuff you're doing.